I heard a story about a very pretty girl. She lived in a little village in the mountains, and that girl was so pretty that three young men in the same village all fell in love with her. She wasn't interested in any of those young men. They just about drove her crazy, always trying to get her attention. Almost every evening, one of them would come to her house and stand outside and sing love songs to her. Sometimes two of them would show up on the same evening. Sometimes all three would come on the same evening. They would sound like a bunch of alley cats out there, each one trying to be the loudest and the most heartbroken with his song. And then in the daytime, they would come racing past her house on fast horses, trying to impress her. Every time she went walking through the town, one of those young men would come up to her and try to hand her a flower or start a conversation with her, no matter how much she told them that she wasn't interested, or came right out and said she didn't even like them. They would not leave her alone. So she decided to teach them a lesson. She went to the carpenter in that little village. She said to him, "¿Cuánto me vas a cobrar para hacer un ataúd, un cajón para un muerto?" "How much are you going to charge me," she said, "to build a coffin?" He told her how much he would normally charge, and she said she would give him twice that much money if he would build a coffin without telling anybody about it, and then take it out to the old empty house that was at the edge of the village. Everybody knew that old house. Everybody said it was a haunted house. They said strange things happened in that house. Well, it was all agreed upon. And then the next time the girl went walking through the town, one of those young men came up to her to start a conversation. She said to him, "You know that old empty house out at the edge of the village? If you go to that house at 11:30 tonight, you will see an empty coffin in the house and a candle burning at the head of the coffin. And if you are brave enough to climb into that coffin and cover your face like a dead man and lie there all night long, I might like to get to know you a little bit better." He was delighted. Finally, she was paying a little bit of attention to him. He said he wasn't afraid to do that. And then before long, the second young man approached her. She said to him, "You know that old empty house out at the edge of the town, don't you? If you go to that house at 15 minutes before midnight tonight, you will see a coffin in the house and a dead man lying in that coffin. And if you are brave enough to pull a chair over beside the coffin and sit and pray over that dead body all night long, I would like to get to know you a little bit better." He was happy too, and he said he was going to do it. And then, of course, it wasn't long before the third young man spoke to her. She said, "You know that old empty house out there at the edge of the village? If you go to that house at midnight tonight, you will see a coffin in the house and a dead man lying in the coffin. And there's another ghost that sits and prays over that dead body all night long. And if you are brave enough to dress yourself up like the devil, with cow horns tied on your head, and your face all covered with charcoal, and you dance around those ghosts all night long, I would enjoy the pleasure of your company." He said he was going to do it too. So that night, a little bit before 11:30, the girl went to the house. The carpenter had kept his word. There was an empty coffin in the house. She lit a candle and put it by the head of the coffin, and then she went into a back room to hide and see what would happen. At 11:30, she saw the first young man arrive. She saw him trembling as he climbed into the coffin, and then he lay back. He covered his face with a cloth. He folded his arms over his chest, and he lay there perfectly still. 15 minutes later, the second young man arrived. He found a chair and he dragged it over beside the coffin. He sat down and he started to pray. She could hear his voice quivering as he was praying. She could hear the rosary beads rattling in his fingers. And then, just at midnight, the one who was praying happened to glance over at the door. He said, "Ay, Dios mío, es el diablo!" "Oh, my Lord," he said, "it's the devil." And when the young man lying in the coffin heard him say that, he came flying up out of that coffin. He said to the devil, "You're not gonna get me yet." And he went jumping out a window and ran away down the road. But when the young man dressed up like the devil saw what he thought was a dead man come flying up out of his coffin and then go diving out a window, he was so scared that he spun around and he ran down the road right behind him. The two of them ran away down the road. The dead man kept hollering, "No, no!" And the devil was right behind him at every step he took. But the one who was praying, he didn't get out of the chair. He didn't stop praying. He sat there praying louder and louder and louder. The girl was impressed with him. She came out of her hiding place. She said, "Tú sí eres valiente. You really are brave. Tú no corriste. You didn't run away." The young man turned his white face toward the girl. He said, "¿Cómo quieres que corra? How do you expect me to run?" he said. "Se me engancharon los pantalones en un clavo. My pants are stuck on a nail," he said. But just then the nail popped out of the chair. He fell to the floor face first, and then he jumped up and ran down the road after the other two. And the next day, the girl told all of her friends what had happened, and her friends told their families about it, and their families told other families about it. Everybody in the village heard about it, and those three young men were so embarrassed they never bothered her again. And they say that in that little village, even today, if somebody does something that seems like it took a lot of courage and they start to brag about how brave they are, people will say to them, "Oh, maybe you're brave," or "Maybe your pants just got caught on a nail."